I've sent the word out. Happy Monday, everybody. For those of you watching live, you know the drill. Please let us know that you are here by dropping the hashtag live in the comments below. If you are watching as a replay, same drill, hashtag replay in the comments below. Let us know that you are here if you took the time to celebrate this past weekend's 4th of July holiday. Let us know how that went. Brian, good to see you, man. Congratulations on completing your 70. I know it was 70 point something, and I know I'm freaking dropping the ball because I've had a lot of brain fog myself, but congratulations, man, on completing completing your try this last couple weekends. Looking forward to catching up with you. But yeah, welcome to this month's training, everybody. We're happy to be here. Happy to share some new information with you all. Megan's been hard at work over the last few days putting together the content for today's training. So, okay, Brian said 70.3. Thank you for the correction, man. Yeah, so let's get the ball rolling. Megan, do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, let's do it. And share my screen.
And as we make this transition to Megan sharing her screen, we always want to make sure, given that this is being streamed live, we want to make sure that this is being seen and heard in as high of quality as humanly possible. So for those of you watching live and as a replay, post a thumbs up or something of some sort in the comments, letting us know that you can see this, you can hear us, everything technologically, excuse me, is working as it needs to. All right, Megan, take it away.
All right. So today we're going to be covering nutrition and fitness social media account red flags. This is something Patrick and I get asked about all the time. You know, people come to us, I saw this thing online. What do you think about that? I saw this person doing this diet online. What do you think about that? What about this movement? I saw a trainer online doing that, right? And so the intention behind today's training is to give you the knowledge to kind of filter through some of the massive amounts of information that there is online. So with that being said, we will go ahead and move forward. Actually, before I'm gonna stop sharing, I need to pause really quick because I forgot to do something on the back end. Sorry about that.
So for those of us that enjoyed a holiday weekend, feel free to post in the comments below, letting us know what you did. What'd you do for fun this weekend? Would love to hear how everything's going in y'all's world. Let us know in the comments below as Megan's tying up a couple loose ends on her presentation.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Cool.
Zoom changed their layout, so it's hard to like find things now. Okay. All right. So yes, like I said, we're going to be covering red flags today to help you sift through all of the information that is out there. So hopefully you can feel less overwhelmed with all the nutrition and fitness information that exists online. All right. Well, so who are we? If you are new here, welcome. If this is your first training, we're happy to have you. My name is Megan Ryan. I'm a registered dietitian, and I am accompanied by my wonderful husband, Patrick, who is a fitness industry veteran. Together, we have over 20 plus years of experience in the health and fitness industry. And we help people break free from the cycle of inconsistency. What we really focus on in this group and in our coaching business is helping you establish a robust foundation, which is often overlooked by the traditional fitness industry. And our shared passion revolves around supporting you and cultivating a healthy relationship with food, your body, and physical activity. So that's who we are. And like I said, if you're new, welcome. So what we ask of you during these trainings is that we encourage each one of you to actively participate, ask questions by leaving comments below, and sharing your experiences throughout the session. Sharing, they say sharing is caring. It's very true. It helps engage it helps engage the collective learning experience and engage one another as well as with us. So we know how to help you and reframe things if we need to, or just talk about things in more depth where more context is needed. So as we're going throughout the training, feel free to chime in with your thoughts, and we look forward to hearing from you. All right. I did not do a transition slide. We're just going to jump right in. So I think I did like 10 examples of some red flags to look for. So on these social media accounts, was there anything you wanted to add, Patrick, before we dive in?
Yeah, just to give kind of a temp check for those that are here live and even those watching as a replay, post a number one in those of you in the stream, because I know the replay is going to be on YouTube and you may not be able to do it as in real time. But for those of you here in the free community watching, post a one in the comments below if you've ever come across a piece of content on social media that left you scratching your head, kind of feeling like, I don't understand this, this feels too good to be true, or this feels like absolute BS. Type a one in the chat if you've ever found yourself in that position. Because as we all know, as you are consuming this, whether it be live on Facebook in our free fitness community or as a replay in the group or on YouTube, for those of you that watch stuff on YouTube, there's a lot of information out there. And for those of us that aren't as keen on what to look out for, we may find ourselves confused about what we're looking at and whether it's legitimate or whether it's actually applicable to our own personal journey. Yeah, Brian's typed a one, so we've been there before. So like Megan made mention, we're going to line out a handful of things or red flags, as Megan put it, to look out for as you are browsing mainly mainstream fitness social media content.
Right on. So the first one is that they are claiming to heal your PCOS, menopause, insulin resistance, diabetes, etc. Insert any medical condition there, but are a nutritionist and not a dietitian. So why this is problematic is because, first of all, this is illegal, okay? Someone who is not a dietitian cannot be giving you individualized nutrition intervention for anything that can be diagnosed from a medical doctor. That doesn't mean that nutritionists, Patrick technically is a nutritionist. There are nutritionists out there that have a great education and background. But again, if you go online and you see that they're calling themselves a nutritionist, I see this a lot with like PCOS and insulin resistance specifically. But if they're calling themselves a nutritionist and they're claiming to help you heal any of these types of things or like gut health, any type of IBS or anything like that, it's technically illegal for them to do so. So that is red flag number one. What do you think, Patrick?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Main thing to look out for when it comes to content in this particular case is, as many of you who are part of this community probably already know, but it's worth reiterating, there's a lot of marketing that perpetuates a lot of black or white, all or nothing thinking. And it's taking advantage of that tendency that each of you probably still have. Megan and I have had it in some way, shape, or form by saying that they can completely heal a particular ailment. And if anybody, like Megan is saying that they can heal a particular ailment, they damn well better be sure have the credentials to back it up, which in the mainstream fitness industry, most people don't have those. So it's typically a baseless claim just to garner your attention and get clicks and views and engagement on their piece of content.
And something else I'll say about nutritionists is that the term nutritionist is actually not regulated, at least here in the US. So to become a dietitian, it is a whole different route. I think I did a slide on that. I think it's the next one. Let's see. Yes. So There is a difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that to become a dietitian, it requires 4 years, a 4-year bachelor degree. Now it is required to also have a master's degree. And then for a nutritionist, there are no mandated requirements for education. You could just simply call yourself a nutritionist based on your experience. And that's what a lot of people end up doing. Also, for a dietitian, I had to go through a 1-year dietetic internship where I did 1,200 hours of supervised practice for those different types of medical conditions, right, that I listed on the earlier slide. And again, the nutritionist will not have that mandated hours of supervised practice. And then the dietitian also has to pass a national exam. And the nutritionist there's no accreditation required. A lot of times people will take some type of certification. There's a lot of good ones out there. But again, it's not required to call yourself a nutritionist. And then lastly, to become a dietitian or to maintain your licensure as a dietitian, your credentialing, you have to complete 75 hours of continuing ed every 5 years. That is not the same for a nutritionist, because they are not allowed to do what is called medical nutrition therapy, which is only within the scope of the dietitian. So those are kind of not two main, but two columns of differences there between a dietitian and a nutritionist. So just that's something to keep an eye on if you come across health and fitness content and someone's calling themselves a nutritionist. Definitely go and check their account and see what their education is, because that can be a big differentiating factor between the two.
Yep.
All right. Number 2. Sorry, typo. They blame a specific food for the chronic illness we see today. I see this a lot with seed oils. Our lovely guy, Paul Saladino here. Also, if they're yelling at you without a shirt on, that's also a red flag. But seed oils, dairy, gluten, sugar, I'm sure you've heard it before. No one food causes chronic illness, right? It is a culmination of a lot of factors, diet being one of them. There are also like social influences and psychological influences, right? So like one specific food or ingredient is not going to cause chronic illness. So that's a red flag. And then, like I said, yeah, anyone without their shirt on yelling at you is also a red flag.
Yeah. In this particular case, Megan and I laugh. I don't know if many people see content similar to Paul's, the gentleman that we have screenshotted here, but it's when we take the time to zoom out, pause, take a breath, we see a lot of parallel themes when it comes to this case. We'll call it the mainstream social media fitness industry and that of politics, in that whoever is the most bombastic, whoever is the loudest is going to garner the most attention, even if the information that they're sharing is complete fucking trash, just to be quite honest with you all. So it's always important to navigate social media accounts with a level of skepticism and trying to get an understanding of what this individual's motive is, myself and Megan included. So keeping that in mind when it comes to the delivery and how that message or information is being shared with you.
And something I'll add, if you have seen Paul's videos, you may go to his account and he is a medical doctor. So you may think that he's credible, right? So that's where this gets a little confusing. Medical doctors, he is technically, I think he
Doctor of psychology.
Doctor of psychology, right? So he's not like a medical doctor. So doctor of psychology, also something interesting, doctors do not get, I think they'd maybe take 1 or 2 classes on just like general nutrition. Other than that, they don't get an extensive training in nutrition. So it's a lot of doctors don't like to stay in their lane with nutrition. And a lot of them can be very misinformed, unfortunately. You're gonna have that can go for any discipline. You can have a rogue, doc or even a rogue dietitian. I've seen them, but it does happen. So just that's another thing to keep an eye out for, than just knowing doctors, nurses, Basically, any other profession or discipline in the medical field is not going to be an expert on nutrition other than dietitians or people who have extensively studied nutrition, say they've got a PhD in nutrition or went on a nutrition specific route to get them to med school. But those are very few and far between. But just that's a little added bonus there. All right, number 3. They convince you that you must eliminate a specific food or ingredients from your diet to be your healthiest, disease-free self. So this is similar to the last slide, but I see this a lot with gluten and sugar, again, dairy, right? Because we have to eliminate all of these foods. And why this is dangerous is because once we start eliminating foods unnecessarily, that increases our risk for malnutrition, especially when this comes down to eliminating all carbohydrates from the diet, for example. So it's really important to work with someone and get properly assessed so you know what to eliminate from your diet. Going off of a social media post where someone random is saying that carbs cause inflammation or sugar causes inflammation, that is not general advice, right? Like it's important to go and get properly assessed by a professional so you know if that information applies to you or not.
Yeah, only thing I can add to that is, when we're looking at things through the lens of social media, I think of it through the lens of these are quote unquote people, friends that you're spending time with. And I don't know about you, if I had a friend that was constantly trying to convince me that I've got to eat a specific food item or eliminate a specific food item or ingredient in order for me to be healthy and diet free, I wouldn't be hanging out with them very long. Because there's a lot of shame, blame, and judgment tied around the delivery of this information when it comes to recommended food items. And as we all know, and being part of this community, using fear, using shame, using judgment is not a very healthy, sustainable fuel source. And it ends up creating, for most people, a really, really unhealthy relationship with most food items, which then perpetuates more fear and anxiety around most food items. And I don't know about y'all, eating food is a lot of fun. And we want to make sure that your consumption of all food items is still fun.
Yes. All right. Number 4, they use the words toxic, toxins, or chemicals when talking about foods they want to scare you into eliminating from your diet. This is one I see all the time, like in this meme over here, walking around the grocery store upset, realizing that 90% of what's sold isn't even food. It's toxins and chemicals masquerading as food. So here's a fun fact. Everything in the world is made of chemicals, okay? That's just basic science. And so when someone is saying, oh, our food is just chemicals, it's like, yes, it is chemicals, right? But that doesn't mean that all the chemicals in our food are bad for us, right? When they're talking about preservatives and things like that, and they say toxic, most of the time they can't back up those claims, right? And this is what I tell our clients all the time as well, is the dose makes the poison. Many of these ingredients, all of these ingredients that are allowed in the food supply are rigorously studied, okay? And so the amount that you are eating in a food is well below the established threshold where it would be deemed harmful. And usually that comes out to eating like 20 to like 100 pounds of food a day. That is just not going to be possible. So claims like this don't make sense, and just shows that there's a lack of understanding of how food is made and the rigorous amount of testing that all these foods go through as well.
Absolutely. And much like you all know, and being a part of this community, it's the gray area, it's the nuance behind these conversations that are really important. And one thing that Megan and I have had a lot of conversations around when it comes to the unfortunate misinformation that we do see being spread virally like wildfire on social media is the use case of some of these foods. By all means, as health and fitness professionals, we do the best we can to advocate for individuals to eat as many whole foods based meals as possible, right? And try to moderate how often we do or you do consume highly processed food items. However, for those of you that may not be aware, there's certain parts, certain populations of individuals in this country that deal with what we call food scarcity. And due to their socioeconomic status, these foods that you see in the aisle that Ryan Gosling is hanging out in this meme, for a lot of people, are the only access of some amount of nourishment that they can get. And what we see a lot of in our DMs and conversations with people, especially when Meagan is helping provide nuance for people, is they come across content like this, hence what I was talking about earlier, and it starts to create a substantial amount of anxiety and fear around just about every food people come into contact with. So if people are in a difficult space financially and all they can afford is maybe a more highly processed food item, they can't just focus on buying that food item in order to help nourish them and get them by. They have to then worry about dealing with the shame, the blame, the judgment, the fear around this food item possibly being full of toxins or chemicals or whatever that is going to kill them and or cause them harm. So it's important to acknowledge that all foods exist on a continuum. I've eaten processed foods. I ate processed foods yesterday. I drank a soda. Like it's, you know what I mean? There's a level of gray area here that we have to continue to normalize having conversations around, because as most of you know, you're not always going to be able to eat the healthiest food all the time. You might find yourself in environments where the only option is a less preferable food option. And in that case, eating the food is probably better than starving yourself outright.
Mhm.
So keep that in mind as we move forward.
All right. So the next one is that they push you into buying organic or non-GMO foods over their conventional counterparts, right? So this example here, additive filled processed food versus organic whole foods for the 4th of July, right? And the reason, well, there's a few reasons here to unpack why this is problematic. So first of all, organic, there has been no research that has shown that organic is more nutrient dense than conventional fruits and vegetables. Okay, so you're really going to get less for more money. And so that's the number one problem with a lot of content creators that really push this narrative, is that they're making quote unquote healthy eating even less accessible by promoting really expensive groceries that aren't even necessary. So buying organic, it's not going to be the thing that moves the needle the most as far as your health is concerned. So that's, like I said, one of the top things to think about is when you're coming across content and they're saying, hey, you should be buying all organic, you should be, the less ingredients on the list, the better. And then they advocate for more expensive swap type items. Your grocery cart's going to be twice as expensive for no reason, right? So like I said, there's no research to back any of these claims that organic is better than conventional as far as the nutritional content of those foods. And then as far as non-GMO foods, that's also more of a marketing term than anything. I think there's only 12 foods that are technically GMO in the food supply in the US. And so, but all of these food products that, wouldn't actually have a GMO food in them, slap a non-GMO label on them so they can jack up the price. And these content creators that don't know any better say, hey, eat all non-GMO, like this is a better alternative, when that food wasn't gonna have a GMO food in it to begin with. So that's another thing to think about with that. But mainly it's just doubling your grocery bill for no reason. And I think we can all agree that groceries have gotten more expensive, and so there's no reason to make living a healthy lifestyle even less accessible.
Right. Yeah, the key distinction here is the goal is to encourage whatever lifestyle adjustments, in this particular case, your diet, make sure it complements your life and does not complicate it. If you're finding that you're coming across content that makes you feel like, fuck, this is complicating the shit out of what I already have in place, that's probably a good sign for you to move on to the next piece of content. So for context here, for those of you watching live and as a replay in the community, type a 2 in the chat if you found yourself coming across some sort of a piece of content that's similar to this, that's kind of worked through extremes of, okay, this is a process filled food cart, and then the alternative needing to be completely organic, go to Whole Foods, go to a Sprouts or whatever it might be, and buy the organic option. Type a 2 in the chat if you've ever come across a piece of content like that, or if you've had a conversation with someone who's told you that that needs to be the next viable or reasonable option for you. And while they're doing that, yeah, we got some 2s in the chat. So it's a very common thing. So, in taking time to look at this meme on the screen here, let's just say, for example, the left-hand column represents your grocery cart purchasing food from Walmart. And then the right-hand column, the organic Whole Foods, represents getting your food from, let's just say, Whole Foods, right? If you're in the space financially to make that investment to go to Whole Foods and buy your groceries, more power to you. However, to Megan's point earlier, you can still grocery shop for the food swaps that would be a possibly better fit for you when it comes to navigating that continuum and that spectrum of food at Walmart, and not having to go anywhere different to get the food items you need. So it's very much a process of asking yourself, is this piece of content meeting me where I'm at in a healthy, collaborative, complementary way? And if it's not making you feel like this is a collaborative dynamic, then you have all the information you need when it comes to whether or not you want to continue to engage in that, we'll say that fitness influencers content moving forward.
And one more thing I want to add about this infographic that I have here on the screen is I think we can all agree the foods on the left-hand side are not very nutrient dense versus the ones on the right side are more nutrient dense. It is the healthier option there. But this post was for the 4th of July. Okay. This is like additive filled processed foods for 4th of July versus an organic Whole Foods 4th of July. 4th of July is once a year, right? Like, hopefully we're not eating these foods all of the time, and I want to give you permission that you can enjoy these foods. You can have a hot dog with a regular bun, you can have a popsicle, you can have baked beans, right? Everything in moderation, and that is another problem with this type of content, is that it promotes like you always have to be eating quote unquote healthy all of the time, and you can't enjoy any of the fun foods. And that's actually a very disordered way of living and a very disordered way of eating. So that's why this content is very harmful, in my opinion, as a dietitian, because it makes you afraid to just live your life, like Patrick was mentioning. It's not meeting you where you're at. And we shouldn't go into holidays fearing what the food situation is, right? We should be able to go into it and acknowledge it's an anomaly, acknowledge it's going to be one day, everything will be fine, right? But if we're going into those days with full of anxiety, like that lets us know, like, hey, somewhere along the way we're getting messaging around food that is problematic. And so if you come across content like this, that's just something to keep in mind and something to pay attention to when you are going into meals like that. Like, how is your mindset and connecting the two? Like, how is that actually impacting your mental health and your relationship with food?
Right.
All right. So number 6, they make bold claims and don't often because they can't link them to actual human outcomes in research. So this comes back to something I mentioned earlier, is, and we can use the dirty dozen as an example. When we'll also use seed oils as an example. So that's another one I see a big one about. It's like, oh, seed oils are inflammatory, right? Like seed oils cause chronic disease, right? Or sugar causes chronic disease. But when they are asked to provide actual research that are human randomized controlled trials or meta-analyses on humans and data linked to humans. They don't have it. And it's because they can't. So they will make all these bold claims, but they can't back them up with any data. And why that's important is that we use research to make recommendations. So if there's not any research to back up some claims, we can't be making those bold claims because it's not safe to say that and to influence the public in that way. So that's a red flag because they are using their influence on shaky ground, right? They're not actually giving you quality information around food. They're just using fear as a marketing tactic.
Yeah, nothing I can need to add to that.
And the reason I put the Dirty Dozen here and the Clean 15, what to buy organic, the Dirty Dozen is super guilty of this, right? I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Dirty Dozen, but basically what it is a list that comes out every year of, I don't know if it's just vegetables or if they do fruits too, but basically saying like how many pesticides that they found, like they did independent testing and how many pesticides were found on whatever fruit or vegetable. And why this is actually false is because they don't actually quantify the amount of the pesticide on each fruit and vegetable. They just detect the presence of it. And so back to what I was mentioning earlier, like the dose makes the poison. And so they don't actually back up their claims because they don't have the data to support it. Hopefully that makes sense. Anything you want to add, Patrick?
No, just real quick for those of you watching live and as a replay, just to do a temp check, type a number 3 in the chat if this is tracking, if you found this helpful so far, if you found this valuable in some way, shape, or form. We want to make sure that the trainings we're putting together for you all are helpful, they're valuable, they're beneficial to your life. So type a 3 in the chat if that is something that's been beneficial for you so far. Okay, so we've got some 3s in there. So yeah, let's keep going.
All right. And then if these people that are making these crazy claims do cite research, it's often in vitro or rodent studies. Okay, so I have listed here the hierarchy of scientific evidence. This is so important to know. Like if you want to take a screenshot of any of the slides, I highly recommend it be this one because this will help you differentiate the people who are credible versus those who are not. So citing research at the very bottom of this pyramid is the weakest form of evidence that we have. So those would be case reports, opinion papers, letters. Right above that, we have animal trials and in vitro studies. And those are the ones that get cited the most often by people who are claiming seed oils are inflammatory, sugar is, causes chronic illness, all of these things. It's very, very weak evidence, and those studies are often used as preliminary studies. But once we get up into the randomized controlled trials and even the meta-analyses and systematic reviews, their point falls apart, right? There isn't the research to suggest that their claims are true. They actually show the opposite. And so what a meta-analyses and systematic reviews are is basically they do a search of all the studies on a specific topic. We'll say seed oils, for example. They'll do a search for all of the, as many as they can find, research studies on seed oils and a specific outcome, right? And then they will basically add up all the data and they will show like how strong the evidence is to support whatever claim it is with seed oils. So this will be assessing like hundreds, if not thousands of humans in all of these trials collectively. So that's why it's at the top of the pyramid and it is the strongest because you have the most participants in that type of study. And I also want to point out here, what's not considered scientific evidence is YouTube videos, personal anecdotes. I see that one all the time. This worked for me, so it will work for you. That's not always the case. Gut feelings, parental instincts, some guy you know, websites like Natural News, InfoWars, Natural Health Warriors, Collective Evolution, Green Med Info, Mercola.com, Whale.to, etc. So that's just something to keep in mind. Someone can put together a very well done YouTube video. It can be very, very convincing. But there's no merit to it, right? Just because someone comes off with conviction does not mean that they are factually correct. Anything you want to add, Patrick?
Nope.
All right, number 7, they make you distrust our food supply by making comparison posts like these. If you've noticed, I've shared several things from Food Babe's page. It didn't take long for me to go to her Instagram account and just find all kinds of crazy things. And I've seen a lot of these US version versus UK versions floating around on the internet. And the outcome of that is everybody feeling like they're not safe to eat anything, which I think, you know, is very insidious. I don't think that is a great way to use your platform, but I digress. So the reason these are red flags and are problematic is because, so the whole, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the US version versus the UK version, the whole thing is that there's ingredients in the US that are banned in the UK, okay? But vice versa is true. There are ingredients that are allowed in the UK that are banned in the US. For example, trans fats. We have human data to support that trans fats increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, and that is why they are banned in the US. In the UK, they just tell it is strongly discouraged in the food supply, but they don't completely restrict it, okay? A lot of the ingredients that posts or accounts like these like to claim are harmful. Again, there's not a lot of human evidence to support it. And like I mentioned earlier, the dose makes the poison. So you'd have to eat a lot of these Doritos for them to even make an impact, right? To even scratch the surface of those ingredients being harmful. And why I also think these are a red flag is they're focusing on these types of foods, but they're not promoting whole foods at the same time. They're not saying, hey, you know, cut out all these ingredients, but at the same time, let's eat some whole nutrient dense foods, get in some fiber, vitamins and minerals, all that kind of stuff. They will say, hey, buy these more expensive swaps for these chips, which is still processed. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. But anything you want to add, Patrick? Hopefully that all makes sense.
No, this is more your MO than mine. So yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay. Next, and if you guys have any questions about these, feel free to let us know. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. If you've seen these online, let us know what questions you have.
Type them in the comments.
Yes. So number 9, they scare you into thinking you're a bad parent if you don't eat non-GMO organic whole foods 100% of the time. This is the one that gets me the most, because it be completely honest with you, it's like cult behavior. It's like using children to manipulate you into feeling bad. And I strongly disagree with that marketing tactic, but I see it popping up a lot with a lot of wellness influencers. So an example, again, Food Babe posting pictures of her and her kids. She has had several posts around, you know, why are we feeding this to our kids? And I've had several people send me messages on Instagram saying that they're worried about the foods that they're feeding their kids, and because kids are vulnerable, right, and they're innocent, and we want to do our best to protect them. So I find posts like these horrifying, that they use their kids in this way to make you feel bad to buy their products, to eat a certain way. It is a huge red flag, and it obviously makes me very upset. So just keep an eye out for that. If they're using their kids, like I've seen Paul Saladin, maybe not Paul Saladin, there's another guy that kind of looks like Paul that was doing it. Jesse Itzler has done it. Now Food Babe has done it. And it's becoming a trend among these like wellness influencers to use their kids to make you emotional and bait you into their objective and their agenda. And I just think it's gross.
Yeah, it's not great, and something to keep in mind for you all watching this live and watching it as a replay. It's important. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you're at. And what I mean by that is we all have to acknowledge that we live under the umbrella, we live under the system of predatory capitalism. So what often happens in these instances, I'm not saying it's exactly with Food Babe, although I would not be surprised, or any of these other people we've mentioned. The swaps that they are suggesting are usually partnerships they have with these other companies.
Yeah.
So there's a financial incentive behind why they would even make the swap or the suggestion in the first place. And that's not often clearly communicated in these posts. So they're making a suggestion for a swap that, sure, in many cases may be a healthier option. I don't know. But to Megan's point, it's just important to navigate social media skeptically when it comes to a lot of the marketing tactics that are used, when it comes to using fear, when it comes to using children to help point you in a different direction, that 9 times out of 10, that direction or that swap financially supports the person that's suggesting that you make the swap, instead of them suggesting the swap just to help make your life better. So
Mhm.
it's something well worth keeping in mind, because in quite to be quite honest with you all, Megan and I only see this issue getting worse.
Yeah.
And it's likely going to result in a higher frequency of eating disorders, a higher frequency of disordered eating, that is going to impact just about every person in this country, regardless of socioeconomic status. Because there's just no nuance in social media, right? It's always got to be this polarizing piece of content that exploits your ignorance, that exploits your fear, that exploits your inability to manage your emotions, that exploits, all the things that you don't, your ignorance, all the things you don't know. So it's just worth keeping that in mind as we move forward.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind around another reason someone using their kids to make you emotional and to feel bad about the foods that you're eating, why that is also a red flag for them, like personally, is because many eating disorders develop in childhood. So being around, like one of the biggest predictors of a child developing an eating disorder is being exposed to restrictive eating, dieting, all of the stuff that's in this post right here. Children being exposed to that it significantly increases their risk for eating disorders. So anyone who would subject their children to that, I view them as a red flag, because I know maybe they just don't know any better, or maybe they're actively in an eating disorder and they don't know what they're doing, the impact they're having on their kids. But that's just something to keep in mind if you see that online as well.
Yeah, like for instance, I'm briefly looking through the caption here. Swipe left to see the homemade banana splits recipe for my newest cookbook, Food Babe. Like there you go. Like it's right. And again, I'm not knocking anybody for trying to make a living and all that kind of stuff. I think the key distinction is how you're doing that.
Yeah.
And it's worth us continuing to plant seeds with you all as you navigate the world of social media.
Yep. And then lastly, they will also sell a line of supplements and powders directly on their website. So back to Patrick's point, this is again the Food Babe. I did a little digging around on her website earlier. They always will be, they'll say, oh, we need to have these ingredient swaps. We need to be watching out for the ingredients in our foods. We need to be watching out for processed foods, right? But then we'll be selling a supplement line, protein powder line, and again, why this is a red flag is because supplements aren't regulated, okay? Anything and everything can be in a supplement line, and it's not regulated by the FDA. So there are no regulations around testing to make sure that you're getting what it says that's in your product actually is in your product. So that's why it's a little hypocritical of wellness influencers like this to be promoting supplements when they are all about quote unquote clean eating and less ingredients and less processed foods. Supplements and protein powders are one of the most processed types of foods and products that you can buy. So like Patrick mentioned earlier, it all comes back to how they're making their money. And like Patrick said, it's like it's okay for people to make money, but it's how you go about doing it and to in my personal opinion, this is not an ethical way to go about it.
Yeah. So it's always worth just paying attention to, and that includes the content you consume from Megan and myself, and making sure that what you're seeing is feels congruent to you and feels like you're being empowered and feels like you're being educated in a way that complements your life and again and does not complicate it. Um, yeah, that's all I have to add.
Yeah. So the bottom line with this training, I know we covered a lot, but getting healthy is empowering. It is not something to be feared, right? So if you're coming across content and it makes you feel worried about the foods that are in your refrigerator or in your pantry, that's a red flag. And if you come across content that fear is a tactic to keep you watching, just keep scrolling because it's not going to help you in the long run if it's only fueling the fire of food anxiety down the road.
Yep. Um, outside of that, my friends, if you do have any questions, this would be the time to post those questions in the chat, in the comments below. Otherwise, for those of you watching live and for those of you watching as a replay, would love to see your biggest takeaway. What was your biggest aha, golden nugget? What about today's training really resonated with you? We'll give it a minute or two for y'all to type that in the comments below because we'd love to see the feedback so that way Megan and I can continue to make whatever necessary adjustments to future trainings to make sure you're getting the most out of this community and you're getting the most out of the information we provide. So for those of you watching live, those of you watching as a replay, type in the comments below what was the golden nugget, what was the big aha for you relative, excuse me, to today's training. And we'll see if we get anybody that chimes in the chat. And then outside of that, we'll close it out. Close it out for this month's training. While we wait and see if we get any feedback in the chat, Megan, is there anything additional you would like to share with our audience?
I forgot to do the next live training will be on August 12th. That is again the second Monday of every month. So that falls on the 12th of August next month. It's
So
crazy that it's already
Monday,
August.
yep, Monday, August 12th, 5:30 p.m. Mountain, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. We know we've got people all over the country. So, well, cool. Well, not seeing anything in the chat quite yet, so I think we're going to close it out there. For those of you in the free fitness community, by all means, post in the group. Let us know if there's anything you want us to cover. You're always going to have access to the replays here in the group itself. Something I am doing is I'm taking these recordings and I'm putting them on YouTube to clue our email list or our email community into what we're doing. So for those of you that are watching from our email community or you found us somehow through YouTube, I will be posting the link to our free fitness community where you can catch these trainings live in the group as well as get further support that you need through your journey. So the link to the group will be in the description below. But otherwise, thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for being here and continuing to have a thirst for knowledge that's evidence-based so you just don't have to deal with any unnecessary BS. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your support, and we will catch you next month on the 12th.
Yep.
All right. Take care, y'all. We'll catch you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.